Was I wrong? That's the question. This is David from DN Cognitive Counseling. And the question I got, was I wrong about Joe Biden? After all, if you saw his speech at the Democratic Convention, which was phenomenal, he gave a strong, powerful, emotional speech. And would that blow a hole in the aspects of what I talked about in reference to the issues that I've seen and the cognitive issues that look like to be going on? Now, again, as a mental health professional, you can't diagnose anybody from seeing them over something, and you can't always get a sense of what's actually going on as you're seeing segments. But the question would be is, would these be things that you'd be concerned about in seeing in somebody? And I still maintain the answer to that question still is yes. And I'm going to go through a couple of reasons why. In fact, during the speech, I think that there was a psychological ploy utilized as a means of trying to tell everybody else that this is not an issue, there's nothing to see here. Now, I think it came across incredibly well. I think that he did a great job in terms of the speech, and the truth is that in a lot of ways, he recaptured some of his self, and a lot of people can do that for short periods of time in controlled settings. And again, remember, this was not a crowd. There was no external noises. It was a person in front of a teleprompter giving a speech. So the nature by which he was attempting was this interaction was very different. It was a monologue, not a dialogue. It wasn't something that he was responding to or having to think on his feet. This was a prepared speech given. And again, like I said, did a very phenomenal job in terms of the speech. So I want to go over a couple of points. And I'm also going to add in, I actually thought that Joe Biden was going to win this election hands down. I believe that, said it to a couple of people, and thought for sure that Joe Biden was going to win this election. I am not sure that's going to be the case anymore. And as somebody recently asked me why, and I was trying to explain to them. So hopefully in this video I will explain a little bit more and actually utilize his speech to explain why that's the case. But I just want to go on with the first point of the speech. And that is when Joe Biden says this.
We'll choose hope over fear, facts over fiction, fairness over privilege.
Now, a great line. Joe Biden says we're going to choose fact over fear, right? And we're going to choose, fact over fiction. And this line is a great line. And this is where Joe Biden actually had issues in the past. And where psychologically what I think he's trying to do is correct that to show, look, that was a flub, but this is a corrective action to that flub. And he did this more than once.
We choose unity over division. We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts. And so, folks...
And here is where the flub takes place, where he utilizes the same mentality, the same idea of trying to draw those parallels, and that's where he gets the confusion. And again, I don't think Joe Biden did this by mistake. I think this was intentionally done as a means of saying, listen, I still got it. It's okay. And he does it again. Watch.
For Lord's sake, this is the United States of America. And there's never been anything we've been able to accomplish.
And again, in this statement, this is the United States of America. We've never been able to accomplish anything. And I think that, again, this is a minor flub, but this is what happens more and more. And again, he spoke for a very short period of time. This was not a long speech. I think they said it's one of the shortest in history for somebody who's accepting the Democratic National the convention for the honor. I'm not sure whether or not that was done as design or because people are going to be less likely to listen to things. But there's no question that this was a systematic way of trying to limit those issues. And in watching the speech very carefully, there still were a couple where he catches himself. And again, this is from reading off of something. So even though he's reading off of something, there's still minor things going on in terms of the way that he's reacting. But let's go to a secondary thing where he does exactly the same thing of trying to correct a wrong that took place before.
Words written in the sacred documents that founded this nation, that all men and women are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So here, quoting from the Declaration of Independence, Biden does a good job of quoting and being clear about the message that he's trying to explain and ascertain. Now, the reason why, and I found that, like, why is he quoting this part over here, was a little bit, seemed like he fit it in, but I think the reason, again, has to do with he was trying to correct a wrong that he did over here.
For America to back up on its feet and once again fight for the proposition that we know these truths to be self-evident. Sounds corny. Ron Joe, think about it. We know these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by God. You know the thing. You know how we talk about it. We the people, folks, endowed by our Creator, certain animal rights. We've never lived up to that.
Now here, Biden messes up the entire Declaration of Independence, something that he knew and has probably quoted a million times. But you see that his mindset is not catching what he used to know. He's searching, he's looking while he's having the speech. Now, again, this is not something that would be, somebody's name that he didn't make a mistake about knowing somebody or didn't know them. This is the Declaration of Independence, which, again, he's been quoting through his entire career. So this is not something Biden would not be very comfortable with in terms of understanding and knowing. And that's the reason why, cognitively, I think there's an issue. And that's what I'm pointing to as what needs to be looked at now. Why that's there, I have no idea. But it's definitely something that people are going to be concerned about and questioning. Then there's the elements, and I'm not going to get through the political elements of the speech because I don't think that that's what's relevant. But psychologically, there's a lot of fear that's going on. We just went through a pandemic. And some places are still going through it, and people are worried about what's going to happen next, what happens when they open schools. And there's a lot of fear. And then we have all the racial tension, which is also something that's causing a lot of issues in terms of people's fear. Fear has a tendency of making people do things that feel more comfortable, something that makes them feel safe. You don't want to create an establishment where you're creating less safety. And I want to take a look at two elements of what happened with Biden in his speech that I think is going to cause him a problem if he continues. And this messaging is, I think, going to be incredibly effective for people to change what they may politically believe because of the fact of fear for their safety of their families and people they know. So Biden in his speech said something that was very good in terms of the aspect of unification or unifying.
Have the light, not the darkness. It's time for us, for we the people, to come together. And make no mistake, united we can and will overcome this season of darkness in America. We'll choose hope over fear, facts over fiction.
So, again, Biden talks about the idea of unity, of bringing people together. The idea is that he wants people to feel like they're part of a whole. And what happens when he has to deal with the first racial charged issue in the news? What does Biden do? Cops in Wisconsin must be held accountable after shooting a black man in front of his young children, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden said Monday. Police shot Jacob Blake, 29, multiple times in Kenosha, Wisconsin on Sunday. as he opened the door of the vehicle where an attorney hired by his family said his 3 children sat. Blake was taken to Milwaukee Hospital and stable after coming out of surgery, NBC News reported. The officers involved were placed on administrative leave as an investigation takes place. The Wisconsin Department of Justice said Monday it was not immediately clear how many officers shot Blake. The shooting is the latest string of police violence against black Americans captured on video this year, sparked uproar and protests against systematic racism in Wisconsin. Democratic politicians called not only for justice for Blake, but also for charges to address systematic racism as the root of excessive use of force against black people. This calls for an immediate, full, and transparent investigation, and the officers must be held accountable, Biden said in his statement Monday. Now, Biden talked about the idea of unity. He talked about the idea of bringing people together. We just had a situation with George Floyd, and we got a media narrative that told one story. And when the camera version of the events took out and you got to see the full event, it gave a very different narrative. Not to saying there wasn't things that were wrong or whether or not maybe procedures should be changed or laws should be changed about the procedures, especially in reference to what police can do and how they interact with the public in general. I mean, those are things that need to be looked at. But as it stood, as the laws are and what the laws are on the books at the time, the narrative that we were told and what happened on the video were not the same. So I believe at this point, rushing to judgment is a very problematic and dangerous thing. It would have been much better for Joe to have said the first part of his statement. We need an open and transparent investigation into the matter. That, perfect. You are acknowledging the problem of the situation, and you're saying we need to know the facts. Beautiful. The second part of the statement, and we need to hold the police officers accountable, is the problem. It already assumes that the officers are guilty. And already talking about systematic racism implies that there is a racially motivated bias. Now again, if I cherry pick stories, I can always just show you one nature of one thing. But as we see and as you go through what happens in these stories, the fact is that these things happen with all different races and all different situations. But the media is uplifting one story more than others. We have seen tragic murders of children, and I've done a video on this, and you can look back, and it breaks my heart. The nature of these kids being killed in reference to anger that other people are having because it's being stoked. Those children should never have to die. Nobody should ever have to die. And the reality is that we should look at every single case where the police may have been wrong. Absolutely. But to state already, factually, that they need to be held accountable is already stoking that same division that he claims he's going to bring unity to. And that's the problem when you have an agenda and stating I'm going to bring people together at the same time of stoking that is going to bring people more to fear and make people say, I don't want to hear this. He said something else during the speech that did the exact same thing that a lot of people have issues with. And that is this. Oh, sorry.
And I'm not going to have to do it alone because I'll have a great vice president at my side. Senator Kamala Harris. She's a powerful voice for this nation. Her story is the American story. She knows about all the obstacles thrown in the way of so many in our country. Women, black Americans, South Asian Americans, immigrants, the left out and the left behind. But she's overcome every obstacle she's ever faced.
Women, black women, people of color. What Joe Biden did there, I don't think serves well to creating this narrative again where the reason why he chose Kamala Harris, Kama, as she says, Ella, Kamala Harris is because of these boxes that she checked, which is not a really great reason. To talk about her in reference to her accomplishments, what she's done, how accomplished she is, and her resume, absolutely. But to break her down into this identity politics, again, falls right in line with the Republican attack that Democrats don't look at people as people. They look at them as in boxes, that there's going to be these racial quotas everywhere, that everybody's going to be looked at everybody else and making basically more racism. Oh, we can't hire you. We have enough of you here. It's like basically, what do you mean you have enough of me? I'm not here. No, you're kind. I mean, think about those language that's being used. That is not the democratic principles that were created when we went to say get rid of racism. It actually increases racism, not decreases it. The nature of talking about her accomplishments, how she's the best person for this job, absolutely. But to state she's the best black woman, immigrant, oh wow, this is great. There was an interesting conversation that took place between Bill Maher and Joe Rogan in reference to this. And I really wanted to end on this conversation to explain how bad this ideology is and the problem with it.
At some point there were 24 Democrats in there, and when a white guy would get in, it was very common to hear, do we need another white guy?
Yeah.
And that was completely okay on the left. And it's like, okay, but then we are saying that we're using race to judge whether someone is qualified. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. We are using race and gender to say whether someone is qualified, just so we understand what we're doing here. Because I don't think that's exactly what Martin Luther King meant when he said judge by the content of their character and not the color of their skin, which seems to elude a certain
What's the
segment.
dumbest form of identity politics, and it's really ridiculously dumb when they don't realize that that same sort of strategy is going to come right back around at you. It's like people that think oh, that guy's pissing me off, I'm going to go fucking punch him. Well, guess what? He's going to punch you back. Like it's not that simple. If you go around judging people based on their gender and their color and their race, guess what? They're going to do that to you now. Like it's a terrible strategy.
In California, they are trying to pass a law to strike back the idea of not being able to hire people based upon gender or color. And the law was you can't discriminate against anybody, you can't hire them for it. Now they want to get rid of that, or they're looking to get rid of it. And as Joe Rogan said, and I absolutely agree, this is a really, really bad idea that will be used against. This is where white supremacy meets the leftist. This is where they meet together, where they both believe that, in which I brought that really great comedian who gave you the idea of the woke and the left. I mean, woke and the racist. The woke and the left, the woke and the racist. And they're sitting there basically agreeing with one another and becoming the best of friends. That is not the country we want to live in. And it doesn't breed unity. It breeds disunity. And I think that the nature of this, in connection with the violence and the lack of recognition of being able to stop it, because basically if you don't address it, you can't. And the nature of rushing to judgments is not going to bode well for people to say, I feel safe. And people are going to choose what they might have not otherwise chosen because of it. Again, if you think I'm wrong, I'd love to hear that. If you disagree with anything I said in this video, please share your comments. And again, if you liked the video, hit like. If you dislike, please tell me why. And of course, if you didn't subscribe, please do. And right below, there's the Subcribe-star link where you can tell me whether you can become a patron to the endeavor that we're trying here. I thank you very much. Have a good night and good mental health.